So just to give us a bit of an overview of some of the economic and social problems within the Mid Tudor Crisis. The period from the death of Henry VIII in 1547 to the death of Mary in 1558 witnessed a large numbers of rebellions, as well as an even greater number of riots and small outbursts of unrest throughout much of the country. The underlying causes of much of the unrest were the social and economic problems caused by issues such as population and price rise, poor harvests, and growing poverty. These problems were becoming ever more acute, but they were rarely the trigger for the outbreak of violence. Factional conflicts increased at the end of Henry VIII's reign, as we know, in the 1540s, but then acutely in 1547 with and the new leader of Edward as a child monarch. And due to factional conflicts, it weakened the government's control over the country. On top of that, religious uncertainties caused by the changes under Henry VIII added to the potential for instability, with unrest in Cornwall in both 1547 and 1548, when William Body attempted to supervise the destruction of images. In order to try and win support for his regime, Somerset continued Henry VIII's war with Scotland. This did not happen and only resulted in the need for further debasement of the coinage to raise even more funds, adding to the already rising levels of inflation. In order to try to dampen unrest, Somerset attempted to tackle the problem of enclosure, and he set up a commission in both 1548 and in 1549. However, their establishment convinced many of the peasantry that he was unsympathetic to their concerns, and they took the law into their own hands and began to pull down the enclosures. Unrest began in 1548 at Northaw in Hertfordshire, but it was in 1549 that witnessed the worst outbreaks of violence. The late spring and summer of 1549 witnessed rebellions and unrest in at least 25 counties. Most of the risings were easily dispersed by the local gentry. But the Western Rebellion, which is also known as the Prayer Book Rising, in Devon and Cornwall, and also the Ket's Rebellion in East Anglia, developed into large movements of disorder. Ket's Rebellion involved over 16,000 men, and the rest of the rebellion 5,000. The government was forced to hire mercenaries and bring in troops to put the risings down. In the West Country, the rebels were able to besiege Exeter before being defeated. In East Anglia, the rebels actually captured Norwich before they were slaughtered. The rebellions weakened Somerset's government, and his handling of them played a significant role in his fall from power in the autumn of 1549. Meanwhile, the successful suppression of Ket's rebellion by Northumberland increased his support and helped in his takeover of power in the winter of 1549 to 50. Northumberland's reputation may have prevented unrest during his period as Lord President of the Council, but Edward's declining health in spring 1553 resulted in an attempt to alter the succession, and this would have prevented his half-sister Mary from inheriting the throne. And this was obviously motivated heavily, by Northumberland's self-interest, but also by the fact that she was a Catholic. The idea was for Lady Jane Grey, the great niece of Henry VIII, was to succeed to the throne, and when Edward died on the 6th of July, Northumberland attempted to put this plan into effect, with Lady Jane Grey proclaimed Queen. It brought England close to civil war, as both Northumberland and Mary raised armed forces. But as he approached Mary's stronghold in East Anglia, his supporters began to desert him. He had to abandon the plan, and Mary was able to enter London and was crowned queen. Despite her success in 1553, Mary's position was challenged again in 1554. Her decision to marry Philip of Spain worried many, and a plot developed for a four-pronged attack on London, and in the end only Kent under Thomas Wyatt rose. The rebels reached London before their way was blocked. Wyatt was executed, and Mary also used the opportunity to execute Lady Jane Grey and her husband. Although there was no more serious unrest during her reign, the French backed any potential rebel. It included Thomas Stafford, who attempted to invade in 1557. Despite these challenges, the throne was passed peacefully to Elizabeth when Mary died in November 1558.